Early dawn, inside the ranch's old hay barn. Visuals, soft golden light filters through the weathered cracks in the wooden walls. Dust motes dance in the still air. The scent of hay and earth lingers, calm and quiet. Clint pushed open the barn doors slowly, boots crunching over dry straw. He held a lantern in one hand, eyes scanning for the missing calf. A soft mooing came from the far end, but something else caught his eye, a figure nestled deep in the hay pile. He froze. Maria. She was curled up, knees to chest, arms wrapped around herself. Her dress from yesterday was wrinkled and smudged with straw and dirt. One worn boot had fallen off. Her dark hair spilled across her cheek, tangled and damp with morning chill. She was shivering, her breath visible in the cold air. Clint's brows furrowed, his jaw tightening. He took a step closer but didn't speak. Instead, he knelt beside her, slowly removing his coat, warm, lined with shearling, and draped it gently over her sleeping form. She stirred faintly, but didn't wake. For a long moment, he just sat there, staring at her. This wasn't just a nap. She hadn't gone home last night. Had she even had a home to go to? His hand hovered near her shoulder, hesitating. Then he stood and turned toward the calf, eyes troubled, mind racing. He never thought much about Maria beyond her work, quiet, diligent, invisible. But now, lying in the hay like someone discarded, she wasn't invisible at all. Something twisted inside him. Guilt? Pity? Or something deeper he didn't yet understand. One thing was certain, he couldn't ignore her anymore. Late morning, the ranch house kitchen. Warm light spills through the window. The smell of coffee lingers. Clint leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching as Maria quietly poured water into the kettle. She wouldn't meet his eyes. "Why were you sleepin' in the barn?" he asked, voice low but steady. Maria froze for a second. The kettle shook slightly in her hand as she set it down. "I didn't mean for you to find me there," she said softly, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I was just tired. I didn't want to bother anyone." Clint raised an eyebrow. "Bother me by using the bed in the staff quarters?" Her silence answered him. He sighed. "Maria." She finally looked up, her eyes shadowed but defiant. "The staff room belongs to the cook now. You hired her niece last week. I didn't want to fight for space." Clint blinked, the realization slowly hitting him. "You mean you've been sleepin' in the barn since then?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Sometimes in the tool shed. It's warm if I keep the blankets close." He stared at her, stunned. "Why didn't you say anything?" Maria gave a small, sad smile. "Because people like me don't get to ask for more. I clean. I cook. I stay out of the way. That's the deal, isn't it?" Clint's face darkened, not with anger at her, but at himself. He hadn't noticed. Hadn't asked. The ranch ran well, so he never questioned how. "Well, that deal just changed," he said, voice rough. "You'll move into the house. Today." Her eyes widened. "Into the—" "Yes. Guest room's yours. And you'll eat with me. You're not invisible here, Maria. Not anymore." She said nothing, but her trembling hands spoke louder than words. Noon, town diner, buzzing with chatter and the clink of cutlery. Sunlight streams through the dusty windows. Locals fill every table. Clint pushed through the diner's swinging doors, Maria walking nervously behind him. Heads turned. Conversations quieted. A few ranch hands tipped their hats to Clint, then frowned when they noticed Maria at his side, not in a maid's apron, but in a plain blue dress and clean boots. He didn't sit. Instead, he stepped to the center of the room and cleared his throat. "I've got something to say," he began, voice cutting through the hum of small talk. "About Maria." Maria looked like she wanted to disappear. Clint placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Some of you know she's been working my ranch for years. Quiet. Reliable. Never asked for much. And I never asked what she needed either. That ends now. Whispers rippled across the room. She's not just some help in the background. She's a human being, and she's part of my ranch now, same as any man I've hired. From today forward, she'll be treated as such. Paid what she's due. Living in the house. And if anyone's got a problem with that, he paused, scanning the room, you can speak to me directly. Silence. One woman near the counter muttered, improper, if you ask me. Another older rancher leaned back in his chair. About time someone said it. The cook behind the counter, wiping her hands on her apron, called out, good for you, Clint. Good for her. Maria stood frozen. Clint looked down at her, nodded once. We're done hiding, he said quietly, just to her. In that moment, Maria realized, this wasn't pity. It was respect. And maybe, just maybe, something like hope. Evening, inside the creaky wooden town hall, dusty floorboards, oil lamps flickering, rows of folding chairs filled with townsfolk. The room buzzed with murmurs as Clint stood near the back, arms crossed, jaw tight. Beside him, Maria sat quietly, hands folded in her lap, head held high despite the stares. Mayor Jenkins stood at the front podium, wiping his glasses nervously. We've had some concerns brought up by the council, he said, glancing toward the front row where Mrs. Halbert, the town's moral watchdog, sat stiffly with her lace gloves and pursed lips. This situation, she said loudly, is inappropriate. A hired maid, now living in a man's home alone. Without marriage. It sets a dangerous example for our young women. A few nodded. Others remained silent. Clint stepped forward. She wasn't living anywhere before I offered her a room. Not unless you count the hay pile in my barn. A wave of gasps rippled through the crowd. I didn't know, Clint continued, voice rough. And that's on me. But now that I do, I won't let her sleep like livestock while I've got 4 empty rooms under my roof. Someone in the back called out, she's more decent than half the folks here, and works twice as hard. Then another voice, soft but strong, rose from the crowd. It was Helen Thompson, the widowed teacher. When I lost my husband, none of you offered a room. Maria did. Let the man offer kindness without being condemned. Mrs. Halbert scoffed, but now the room was shifting. Opinions turning. The mayor cleared his throat again. This council doesn't regulate where folks sleep. Unless there's a law broken, I believe we're done here. As the meeting ended, Clint offered Maria his arm. She hesitated, then took it. They walked out not as boss and servant, but as equals. A week later, dusk on the ranch, golden sky stretching over rolling fields. The house glows warmly in the distance, lanterns flickering in the windows. Maria stood on the porch, a cup of coffee in her hand, watching the last rays of sunlight slide over the land. Her dress fluttered in the breeze, and her hair, once always pinned up for work, now flowed freely over her shoulders. Behind her, Clint stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag after fixing the old generator. He paused in the doorway, quietly watching her before stepping beside her. It's different out here in the evening, Maria said, without turning. Doesn't feel so heavy. Clint nodded. You always worked through this time. Never took it in. She smiled. Didn't think I was allowed to. Clint leaned against the porch rail. You're allowed to do whatever you want now, Maria. This place is yours as much as mine. From the barn, laughter rang out, some of the ranch hands joking with her over supper earlier, something unheard of just a week ago. No one called her Maid anymore. They called her by name. Clint looked over at her, studying her quietly. You ever think about leaving? Maria raised an eyebrow. Running from gossip? No. I mean, building something for yourself. Bigger than all this. She looked out over the land again. I don't need to run anymore. This is something. It's more than I ever thought I'd have. He nodded slowly. Well, if you ever want more, you won't be doing it alone. They stood side by side in silence. Not lovers. Not yet. But not strangers anymore either. And somewhere between the fences and fields, something new had taken root, quiet, strong, and just beginning to bloom.